My name is Brooke Williams, and I'm 32 years old. I stand alone in my new empty house, surrounded by untouched food platters and cheerful decorations that mock the silence. 7 years of sacrifice led to this moment, my dream home's housewarming party. The invitations went out weeks ago with enthusiastic responses from my family. Now, I check my phone for the 20th time, hoping for messages that won't come. The beautiful craftsman home that should be filled with congratulations and laughter echoes with nothing but my footsteps. If you're watching this, drop a comment telling me where you're from, hit that like button, and subscribe to join me as I share how my empty housewarming became the most important day of my life. I grew up in Millfield, one of those small American towns where everyone knows your business before you do. My childhood home was a modest ranch-style house with peeling blue paint and a front yard that never seemed to grow grass properly despite my father's persistent efforts. Until I was 12, life followed a predictable rhythm: school, weekend family dinners, and holidays marked by my mother's legendary apple pie and my father's off-key caroling. Everything changed when the shouting started. My parents tried to keep their arguments behind closed doors, but in a house with thin walls, whispers might as well be screams. I would hide in my closet with a flashlight and books, creating my own escape. 3 months of tension culminated in moving boxes and my father's retreating car. The divorce was finalized on my 13th birthday. Instead of cake, I got custody arrangements. Dad didn't stay single long. Within a year, he married Diane, my stepmother, who came packaged with 2 children, Trevor and Amanda, both older than me. Our blended family lived in Diane's spacious colonial across town, where I spent every other weekend feeling like an intruder. My room there was clearly an afterthought, a converted sewing space with fabric remnants still tucked in corners. Meanwhile, my mother Nancy transformed from the woman who baked cookies for my class to someone I barely recognized. Bitterness became her closest companion. "Your father traded up for a bigger house and a ready-made family," she would say when she thought I wasn't listening. Apparently we weren't enough. Family gatherings became diplomatic missions. Thanksgiving meant 2 dinners and careful censorship, never mentioning Mom to Dad or Diane, never talking about my step-siblings to Mom. Christmas required duplicate lists and manufactured enthusiasm for opening the same gift twice. By 16, I was the family's unofficial ambassador, translating feelings and mediating conflicts that weren't mine to solve. Brooke has always been the mature one, relatives would say, as though my forced diplomacy was a charming personality trait rather than a survival mechanism. Through it all, I developed an almost obsessive dream of creating my own peaceful space. I would sketch house plans during math class, layouts of rooms where no one fought, where walls were thick enough to contain private conversations, where no one felt like an outsider. These drawings became more detailed as I grew older, evolving from childish crayon sketches to proper floor plans with measurements and notes about natural lighting. College offered temporary freedom. I attended State University 3 hours away on a partial scholarship, supplemented by student loans that would haunt me later. My first dorm room was shared with Tanya, a music major who practiced clarinet at midnight. Sophomore year brought an apartment with 3 roommates, perpetually dirty dishes, and mysterious food disappearing from the refrigerator. After graduation, armed with a degree in graphic design, I moved to Portland, where entry-level positions barely covered rent. My first apartment was a studio in a neighborhood where sirens provided nightly lullabies. The ceiling leaked when upstairs neighbors showered, the heating worked only when it felt like it, and the landlord considered mold an aesthetic feature. 3 years of design work at a small marketing firm had me creating logos for local businesses and laying out brochures for dental offices. The pay improved marginally, but Portland's housing market soared beyond my reach. Each rent increase felt like punishment for someone else's property investment. On my 25th birthday, while friends suggested celebrating at trendy bars, I stayed home with spreadsheets and calculators. That night, I made a decision: 7 years. I would give myself 7 years to save enough for a down payment on my own home. Not a rental, not a temporary space, something permanent that belonged completely to me. "You're obsessed," my colleague Justin said when I declined yet another happy hour. "It's just a house." But it wasn't just a house. It was the promise of stability I'd never had. It was proof that I could create something lasting when everything around me had proven fragile. It was the childhood dream of a girl hiding in closets, grown into a woman's determination. With my plan set, I opened a separate savings account labeled Home and made my first deposit that week. The journey that would lead to my empty housewarming party had officially begun. 7 years sounds manageable until you're living each day of them. My saving journey began with ruthless budgeting. I created spreadsheets tracking every dollar spent and developed a complicated color coding system: red for essential expenses, yellow for occasional necessities, green for contributions to my house fund. There was no category for luxuries. My apartment became a monument to frugality. I furnished it with second-hand finds and sidewalk rescues, sleeping on a mattress directly on the floor for 3 years because bed frames were optional. My wardrobe consisted of classic pieces that wouldn't go out of style because they were never in style to begin with. I became an expert at making lentil soup that could stretch for 5 meals. While my friends posted vacation photos from tropical beaches and European cities, I picked up freelance graphic design projects. Evenings and weekends disappeared into logo designs for startup companies and website layouts for small businesses. Every extra dollar went straight to my house fund without passing through my checking account, as though lingering there might tempt me to spend it. "You're coming to Cancun with us, right?" my friend Melissa asked during year 2 of my savings plan. "We found an amazing deal, and 10 of us are splitting a villa." "I can't swing it this year," I said, the same response I'd given to weekend getaways, concert tickets, and even expensive restaurant dinners. "You said that last year," Melissa pointed out. "You're going to wake up one day and realize you missed your entire 20s. Maybe she was right, but I remained focused. When my ancient laptop finally died, I worked from the public library rather than buying a replacement immediately. When my car needed expensive repairs, I sold it and navigated public transportation for 6 months while rebuilding my savings. Family events became casualties of my financial goals. My stepsister Amanda's destination wedding in Hawaii? Couldn't afford it. Christmas at my dad and Diane's place 3 states away? The plane ticket cost represented 2 months of utility savings. "It's just money, Brooke," my father said during one phone call. "Family is more important." "I know, Dad," I replied, not mentioning that I'd just worked 20 hours of overtime to recover from an unexpected dental bill. "I'll make it next time." There was always a next time until gradually, the invitations became less frequent. My mother was less diplomatic about my absences. "I suppose your father's family gets all your holidays now," she said during one of our increasingly rare conversations. "I'm not going anywhere for holidays, Mom. I'm saving for my future." "A house won't keep you warm at night," she responded. "But you've always been stubborn." My step-siblings made their opinions known through passive-aggressive social media posts. Another amazing family Christmas. "Almost everyone who matters is here," Trevor wrote beneath a photo where my absence was conspicuously unmarked. By year 3, I had developed a thick skin and a healthy house fund. I created a vision board above my desk, magazine cutouts of craftsman-style homes with character, spacious kitchens where I could actually cook without bumping into walls, garden spaces where I imagined growing vegetables and flowers. I added specific features: a window seat for reading, hardwood floors, a porch where I could drink morning coffee. These images sustained me through doubts and temptations. Each savings milestone deserved private celebration. At $10,000, I bought myself a single glass of expensive champagne. At $25,000, midway through year 4, I allowed myself to walk through an open house in a neighborhood I loved, not ready to buy but needing to touch the dream. "Are you working with an agent?" the realtor asked, noting my intense interest in the home's structural details. "Not yet," I said. "I'm still saving for a down payment." Her expression shifted to dismissive politeness. "Well, take my card for when you're ready." That card became another item on my vision board, a tangible reminder of the next step. Year 5 brought an unexpected promotion at work. Rather than upgrading my lifestyle, I maintained my frugal habits and directed the entire pay increase to my house fund. My colleagues thought I was crazy. "You got a 15% raise and you're still bringing lunch from home?" Justin asked, incredulous. "Old habits," I shrugged, not explaining that my homemade salads represented approximately 15 additional square feet of my future home each month. By the beginning of year 6, my discipline wavered. Friends were advancing in careers, getting married, starting families, building lives while I was still living like a college student. During a particularly low weekend, I almost transferred money from my house fund to book a trip, anywhere, just to feel like I was participating in life. Instead, I revisited my original plans, recalculated how close I was getting, and discovered something remarkable. At my current saving rate, I would reach my goal 6 months earlier than planned. The realization renewed my determination through the final stretch. When I finally hit my target amount, I treated myself to a proper celebration, dinner at a nice restaurant, alone, but with dessert and wine. The waiter asked if I was commemorating something special. "I just saved enough to buy a house," I told him. "Congratulations. Is it a particular house you've had your eye on?" "Not yet," I said. "But I'm ready to start looking." That night, I slept better than I had in 7 years, despite returning to my mattress on the floor. Tomorrow, the real journey would begin. Armed with my down payment and pre-approval letter, I began house hunting with a realtor named Stephanie who specialized in first-time homebuyers. My initial excitement faded quickly as reality set in. The housing market had continued to rise during my years of saving, and my budget now stretched less far than I'd hoped. "This is within your price range," Stephanie said, showing me a townhouse with shared walls and no yard. "It's a good starter home." But I hadn't saved for 7 years for a starter home. I'd saved for my dream. "I need character," I explained. "And some outdoor space. I can compromise on size, but not on charm." Stephanie nodded with the practiced patience of someone who'd heard similar requests from buyers with champagne tastes and beer budgets. The next 6 properties were disappointing in different ways. Too far from the city, needing more work than I could afford, lacking the craftsman details I'd dreamed about. One promising bungalow turned out to have foundation issues that would drain my modest renovation budget before I could even pick paint colors. "Maybe I should wait," I told Stephanie after the 8th disappointing showing. "Save more and try again when I can afford what I really want." "The market isn't likely to get more affordable," she warned. "And interest rates are predicted to rise." We agreed to look at 3 more houses before reassessing. The first 2 were unremarkable, but the third, a 1920s craftsman with a deep front porch and mature maple tree in the yard, made my heart race the moment we pulled up. "This just listed yesterday," Stephanie explained as she unlocked the door. "It needs cosmetic work, but the inspection report from the previous sale attempt shows good bones." I stepped inside and felt an immediate sense of recognition. The entryway opened to a living room with a brick fireplace. Original hardwood floors ran throughout, hidden under worn carpet in some rooms but salvageable. Built-in bookshelves flanked windows that flooded the space with natural light. The kitchen was outdated with laminate countertops and aging appliances, but spacious enough for proper cooking. Upstairs, 3 modest bedrooms had sloped ceilings and quirky angles. The primary bedroom featured a window seat overlooking the backyard, exactly like the one on my vision board. "It's over your budget," Stephanie warned as she watched me measure spaces with my footsteps. "And it will need work." "I want to make an offer," I said without hesitation. "I can handle the renovations gradually." My offer was accompanied by a letter to the sellers explaining my 7-year journey and why their house represented the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. In a market where multiple bids were common, I hoped my personal story might give me an edge despite my inability to offer above asking price. 3 agonizing days later, Stephanie called with news. "They've received 4 offers. 3 are above asking, including one all-cash deal." My heart sank. "But," she continued, "they were touched by your letter. They're giving you 24 hours to match the highest offer." The highest offer was $7,000 above my maximum budget. I spent that night recalculating figures, researching loan options, and finally calling my bank to withdraw the emergency fund I'd maintained separate from my house savings. "I can match it," I told Stephanie the next morning, my voice steadier than I felt. 2 hours later, she called back. "Congratulations, homeowner. They've accepted your offer." The next 30 days were a blur of paperwork, inspections, and anxiety. The home inspection revealed minor issues but nothing structural. The appraisal came in slightly below my offer price, requiring more financial gymnastics. The mortgage underwriting process questioned every deposit and withdrawal I'd made in the past 2 years. A week before closing, the loan officer called with devastating news. "There's a problem with the property's title history," she explained. "We can't proceed until it's cleared, which could take months." I called Stephanie in tears. "Is this it? Am I losing the house?" "Let me make some calls," she promised. That afternoon, my colleague Rebecca offered unexpected help. "My brother works for a title company. Let me see if he can expedite things." Rebecca's brother reviewed the documentation and discovered a simple clerical error that could be resolved quickly with the right connections. 3 days before our scheduled closing, the title issue was fixed. Closing day arrived with a mixture of disbelief and pride. I signed countless documents until my hand cramped, paid fees I hadn't anticipated, and finally received a set of keys that represented 7 years of sacrifice. "Any big plans for your first night?" the selling agent asked as we completed the final walkthrough. "Just sitting still," I replied. "And knowing no one can ask me to move." That evening, I sat on my front porch steps, watching the sunset paint my house in golden light. I had exactly 3 possessions inside: a sleeping bag, a bottle of champagne, and a notebook containing all my plans for transforming the space. I slept on the floor of what would become my bedroom, surrounded by empty rooms full of possibility. For the first time in my adult life, I fell asleep without calculating how my daily choices would impact my savings plan. One journey had ended, another was beginning. My first morning as a homeowner began with a rude awakening. The hot water heater had stopped working overnight. Welcome to homeownership. With my savings depleted by the down payment and closing costs, I needed to approach renovations strategically. I created a prioritized list: necessities first, functioning hot water heater, cosmetic changes that affected livability second, removing old carpet, and wish list items last, replacing kitchen countertops. YouTube became my best friend and personal contractor. I watched tutorials on everything from unclogging drains to installing light fixtures. Home improvement stores recognized me as a regular within weeks. I discovered muscles I never knew existed and developed an intimate relationship with ibuprofen. The carpet removal revealed beautiful hardwood floors that needed refinishing. Unable to afford professional services, I rented a sander and spent a weekend creating enough dust to simulate a desert storm in my living room. The results weren't perfect. Amateur patches were visible in spots where previous owners had made repairs, but the warm wood brought character the carpet had hidden. Painting transformed spaces most dramatically for the least money. I chose a warm white for most walls, with accent walls in colors that made me happy: sage green in the living room, soft blue in my bedroom. Each completed room became a victory to celebrate. The kitchen presented the biggest challenge. New cabinets were financially impossible, so I sanded and repainted the existing ones, replacing only the hardware. The ancient refrigerator hummed ominously but worked, so it stayed. However, after a month of battling the temperamental stove that either burned food or left it raw, I splurged on a new range, my first major appliance purchase. "You should have waited until you could do the whole kitchen," my mother commented during one of our infrequent phone calls. "It'll look mismatched now." "It's a work in progress," I replied, not mentioning the satisfaction I felt cooking a proper meal without setting off the smoke detector. Weekends disappeared into project marathons. I became familiar with the unique challenges of an older home: uneven walls, quirky plumbing, electrical surprises behind every switch plate. When I discovered knob and tube wiring in the upstairs hallway, I finally had to hire a professional electrician, draining my contingency fund but ensuring I wouldn't burn down my newly purchased dream. The plumbing disaster happened 3 months in. I returned from work to find water cascading down the kitchen wall from the upstairs bathroom. The emergency plumber's bill erased my plans for new kitchen countertops, but saved the original hardwood floors from permanent damage. Not all surprises were negative. Removing a patched section of bedroom wall revealed a child's height chart penciled directly onto the original plaster, dating back to the 1940s. I carefully preserved it, framing it with trim as a connection to the home's history. My neighbors proved unexpectedly helpful. Frank next door, a retired contractor, saved me from certain disaster when I nearly cut through a load-bearing wall. "Just stopping by to say hello," he said casually, then noticed my sledgehammer poised at precisely the wrong spot. 80-year-old Margaret across the street appeared one hot Saturday with homemade lemonade while I was struggling to install a ceiling fan, then revealed she'd been an electrician's assistant in her younger years and proceeded to complete the installation in minutes. As summer arrived, I turned attention to the neglected yard. The front garden was overgrown with invasive ivy and mystery shrubs. The backyard resembled a small jungle, with grass tall enough to hide lawn furniture. Weekend weeding sessions gradually revealed garden beds and a stone path I hadn't known existed. Frank offered cuttings from his established perennials. "They'll take a few years to really show off," he said, "but gardening teaches patience." Patience was something I'd cultivated along with my savings. The satisfaction of seeing transformation, even slow transformation, sustained me through setbacks. When a failed attempt at fixing the gutters sent me to urgent care for stitches, I returned the next weekend with proper safety equipment to finish the job. 6 months after moving in, my house had become distinctly mine. The rooms reflected my taste, from the reading nook created in an awkward corner to the home office set up in the smallest bedroom. My furniture was still sparse, quality pieces acquired gradually from estate sales and second-hand shops, but chosen with intention rather than necessity. One evening, sitting on my now-furnished porch with a glass of wine, I realized I'd never properly celebrated this achievement with the people who should care most. My family had seen pictures texted during the buying process, but none had visited in person. The pandemic had provided a convenient excuse initially, but restrictions had eased months ago. "You should have a housewarming," Margaret suggested during one of our over-the-fence conversations. "Show off all your hard work." The idea took root. A housewarming would serve multiple purposes, celebrating my achievement, reconnecting with family members I'd grown distant from during my saving years, and perhaps healing some of the fractures that had never properly mended after my parents' divorce. That night, I created a guest list centered around family: my mother Nancy, my father and stepmother Robert and Diane, step-siblings Trevor and Amanda, extended family members who had drifted away during years of divided holidays. I added colleagues who had supported my renovation efforts and neighbors who had become friends. Looking around my almost complete home, I felt ready to share it. After 7 years of sacrifice and 6 months of transformation, I was finally prepared to welcome others into the space that represented my greatest accomplishment. I designed invitations featuring a before and after photo of the house, set a date 6 weeks out to allow for travel arrangements, and sent them with anticipation and hope. The responses would determine whether my empty housewarming would become an important milestone or a painful reminder of family divisions I couldn't renovate away. The invitations went out on a Tuesday, carefully designed with my professional skills, featuring a watercolor illustration of my house with before and after photos inside. I scheduled the housewarming for a Saturday evening 6 weeks away, giving everyone plenty of time to arrange travel if needed. The RSVP deadline was set for 2 weeks before the event. My phone began pinging with responses almost immediately after I dropped the invitations in the mail. My father called first. "We got your invitation today," he said, genuine enthusiasm in his voice. "Diane and I have been wanting to see this place. Count us in." "Really?" I couldn't hide my surprise. "You'll have to travel." "Of course we'll come," Dad said. "I wouldn't miss it. We're so proud of what you've accomplished." His words warmed something that had been cold for years. My step-siblings Trevor and Amanda texted their acceptances the same day, with Amanda adding, "Can't wait to see this dream house we've heard so much about." Even my mother responded positively, though with characteristic restraint. "I'll be there," her text reads simply. Extended family members I hadn't seen in years sent enthusiastic responses. My Aunt Julia, who lived 3 states away, called to say she was booking a flight. "I wouldn't miss seeing my favorite niece's achievement," she said, ignoring the fact that I was her only niece. With confirmations rolling in, I created detailed plans for the event. The menu would feature everyone's favorites: my mother's preferred spinach dip, my father's beloved jalapeno poppers, my step-siblings' favorite artichoke hearts. I wanted the food to communicate thoughtfulness, to say without words, "I've been absent but I still know you." I created shopping lists, preparation timelines, and cleaning schedules. The house still needed finishing touches, hanging the last of the artwork, touching up paint in high-traffic areas, completing the guest bathroom's cosmetic updates. Every evening after work and each weekend became dedicated to preparation. The expense was significant for someone who had spent 7 years counting pennies. I took on 2 small freelance projects to cover costs without dipping into savings again. The extra work meant painting the guest bathroom at midnight and assembling a new dining table at dawn, but the excitement of finally sharing my home kept exhaustion at bay. As the RSVP deadline approached, I noticed a concerning pattern. The initial enthusiasm had faded, and follow-up conversations with family members included subtle hints of uncertainty. "We're still planning to come," my father said 2 weeks before the party, "though Diane's mother hasn't been feeling well. We're keeping an eye on that situation." My stepsister Amanda mentioned a potential work conflict. "I'm trying to get someone to cover my shift, but you know how it is with weekend scheduling." My mother was more direct. "I've been having those migraines again," she said during our weekly call. "I hope I'll feel well enough to drive down." I reassured everyone, offered to help with travel arrangements, suggested carpooling options. Inwardly, I began to worry, but pushed those feelings aside to focus on preparation. The house had never looked better. New throw pillows brightened the living room. Fresh flowers would be delivered the morning of the party. I practiced recipes to ensure perfection. 1 week before the event, the cascade of cancellations began. My mother called first. "The migraines are worse," she said, pain evident in her voice. "My doctor says I shouldn't drive long distances right now." "I could come get you," I offered immediately. No, she insisted. "You'll be too busy preparing. We'll arrange another time for me to visit, just the 2 of us." That evening, my father called with his regrets. "Diane's mother has taken a turn. We need to visit her that weekend instead. You understand, don't you? Family emergency." I did understand, of course. A sick parent took precedence over a housewarming party. Still, the timing felt suspicious coming immediately after my mother's cancellation. Trevor and Amanda withdrew next, their excuses arriving by text rather than calls. Trevor suddenly remembered a friend's engagement party scheduled months ago. Amanda couldn't find coverage for her shift after all. Neither apologized for the late notice. Extended family cancellations followed like dominoes. Aunt Julia's flight got too expensive. Cousin Michael's child came down with something. Uncle James remembered another commitment. 3 days before the party, I surveyed the complete guest list. Every family member had cancelled. The only remaining guests were Rebecca from work, who had helped with the title issue, and 3 neighbors who could walk home if the party was a disaster. The optimist in me tried one last push. I called family members directly, a final attempt to salvage the gathering. "I know it's last minute," I told my step-siblings, "but I was really hoping to share this with you. The house looks amazing, and I've planned everything around everyone's favorites." "Sorry, Brooke," Trevor replied with audible impatience. "We've made other plans now. Maybe next time." Amanda at least attempted kindness. "Send more pictures? We really do want to see it." My final call was to my father. "Dad, is there any way you could come, even briefly? It would mean a lot to have family here." His sigh carried through the phone line. "Brooke, you disappeared for 7 years to save for this house. You missed holidays, birthdays, Amanda's wedding, and now you expect everyone to drop everything because you're finally ready for company? That's not how family works." His words stung with partial truth. I had missed important moments. But they had also made little effort to accommodate my financial goals, to celebrate my progress, to find affordable ways to include me. "I understand," I said, though I didn't really. "Another time." The night before the party, I sent a group text to the 4 remaining guests, offering to reschedule, tacitly acknowledging the awkwardness of such a small gathering in a house prepared for a crowd. Rebecca responded immediately, "Don't you dare cancel. We're coming to celebrate your amazing accomplishment." With that small encouragement, I moved forward with preparations, scaling down quantities but maintaining the carefully planned menu. I arranged food on serving platters designed for 20 people, knowing 4 of us would barely make a dent. I placed flower arrangements in every room, though most would go unseen. As I fell into exhausted sleep that night, I tried to focus on the home itself rather than the people who wouldn't see it. This had always been about the accomplishment, I reminded myself. The party was secondary. Still, in my dreams, rooms filled with family sharing conversations across generations, laughter echoing through halls I'd renovated with my own hands, connections rebuilt under my roof. I woke to the reality of what the day would actually bring, my beautiful empty house, prepared for a celebration that had collapsed before it began. The morning of my housewarming party dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for the backyard gathering area I'd created with string lights and borrowed patio furniture. I checked my phone immediately upon waking, harboring a foolish hope that overnight messages might include family members reconsidering their absences. The screen showed only a text from Rebecca confirming she'd arrive early to help with final preparations. My neighbors would come at the officially scheduled time. No one else would be walking through my front door today. Despite the reduced guest list, I proceeded with my original preparation timeline. The structure of tasks kept disappointment at bay. I cleaned already immaculate rooms, arranged flowers delivered by a local florist, and began food preparation with mechanical precision. The menu remained unchanged, everyone's favorites would be served, even in their absence. I prepared my mother's preferred spinach dip, arranging sourdough bread pieces around the bowl just as she would have done. I assembled my father's beloved jalapeno poppers, remembering how he'd always eaten too many at family gatherings despite their effect on his sensitive stomach. I marinated artichoke hearts for my step-siblings, prepared from the recipe their mother had shared years ago at a rare harmonious holiday dinner. Each dish represented a memory, an attempt at connection. As I worked, I imagined conversations that would never happen, my mother admiring the original woodwork I'd restored, my father approving of the sturdy repairs I'd made to aging systems, my step-siblings perhaps seeing me as more than the awkward addition to their family unit. By noon, the food was ready, arranged on serving platters strategically placed throughout the first floor to encourage movement through the rooms. The dining table was set with the mismatched vintage china I'd collected from estate sales, complemented by flowers and candles that wouldn't be lit until evening. Music played softly through speakers in several rooms, a playlist curated for different family members' tastes. With preparations complete and guests not expected until 4 o'clock, I found myself at loose ends in my perfectly staged home. I walked through each room, seeing it through imagined eyes. The living room with its refinished hardwood floors and carefully arranged furniture groupings for conversation. The kitchen where countertops still awaited replacement but new hardware brightened old cabinets. The dining room where I'd splurged on a chandelier salvaged from a historic home being demolished downtown. Upstairs, the bedrooms waited with fresh linens for overnight guests who wouldn't arrive. I'd prepared the largest guest room especially for my father and Diane, knowing his back problems required a firmer mattress. The smaller room had been set up with an air mattress for Trevor or Amanda, whichever might stay. Even my mother had been considered. The main floor study arranged with a daybed to accommodate her preference for privacy. Each preparation represented hope for reconciliation, for family bonds mended under my roof. The empty rooms now stood as monuments to rejection. At 3 o'clock, I showered and dressed in the outfit I'd carefully selected, casual enough for comfort but nice enough to suggest the occasion's importance. I applied makeup, styled my hair, and put on the earrings my grandmother had given me before she passed, hoping to carry some family presents with me through the event. At 3:45, I received a text from Rebecca, running about 30 minutes late. Traffic. So sorry. The official start time of 4 o'clock came and went. I stationed myself near windows with clear views of the street, watching for arriving cars, rehearsing welcoming remarks that grew stale with each passing minute. By 4:30, neither Rebecca nor my neighbors had arrived. I checked my phone obsessively, looking for messages explaining delays. Finding none, I sent check-in texts that received no immediate responses. Anxiety crept in. Had everyone decided to cancel without telling me? Had there been some emergency? Had I somehow mistaken the date in all my communications? At 4:45, I tried calling Rebecca directly. The call went to voicemail. Maybe she forgot her phone, I said aloud to my empty house, the sound of my voice startling in the quiet despite the background music. By 5 o'clock, I began constructing explanations to comfort myself. Traffic was particularly bad today. Cell service was experiencing outages. Everyone was running late but surely on their way. I avoided the most obvious explanation, that even these last few guests had decided not to come. At 5:15, I opened a bottle of wine intended for sharing and poured myself a generous glass. I carried it through my beautiful empty rooms, past food that would go uneaten, past places set for people who would never arrive. I settled in the window seat overlooking the backyard, the very feature that had sold me on the house, the spot I'd imagined reading in on Sunday mornings. From here, I could see the patio arrangement that would host no conversations, the garden beds I'd cleared of weeds and planted with perennials that would bloom whether or not anyone was there to appreciate them. By 5:30, the first wave of anger began to displace hurt. I had worked so hard, not just on the party preparations but on the house itself, on the 7 years of saving that made it possible. Did no one value this accomplishment enough to show up for a few hours of celebration? Was I so easily dismissed by everyone who claimed to care about me? At 5:45, I received a flurry of apologetic texts all at once, suggesting a cell service problem had indeed occurred. Rebecca had a flat tire and no service to call for help. My neighbor Frank had a plumbing emergency. Margaret wasn't feeling well. The last neighbor had forgotten entirely. The explanations were reasonable, the apologies seemingly sincere, but they arrived too late to salvage the evening. I responded with brief assurances that I understood, that we would reschedule, that everything was fine. The socially acceptable lies. As twilight deepened, I moved methodically through the house, extinguishing candles never lit, turning off music in rooms never entered, returning food to containers for refrigeration. The kitchen filled with leftovers that would take weeks to consume alone. I carried my third glass of wine to the front porch and sat on the steps, watching lights come on in neighbors' homes. Through windows, I glimpsed families gathering for dinner, friends arriving for evening visits, the ordinary social connections that had somehow eluded me despite my best efforts. The tears, when they finally came, arrived without warning and with overwhelming force. I cried for the wasted preparation, for the family relationships that had deteriorated during my years of financial focus, for the hope that my achievement might bridge those distances. I cried until my throat hurt and my eyes swelled, until the wine glass sat empty beside me and darkness fully enveloped the street. Inside, my phone chimed with a text message. I considered ignoring it, more belated apologies would only deepen the hurt, but habit drew me back inside. The message was from Rebecca. Are you okay? I feel terrible about today. Would it be completely inappropriate to come by tomorrow instead? I could bring some friends who would love to see your place. Totally understand if you'd rather not. I stared at the message for a long time, emotions too raw for immediate response. Part of me wanted to retreat entirely, to lock the doors against further disappointment. Another part recognized the lifeline being offered, not a replacement for family, but perhaps something else I needed. That would be nice, I finally replied, the simple words inadequate to express my gratitude for the offer. Around noon? Some food is still salvageable. Setting the phone down, I looked around my beautiful empty house. The rooms designed for gathering would serve their purpose after all, just not in the way I'd imagined. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, exhaustion suddenly overwhelming. As I prepared for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror, eyes reddened from crying, makeup smeared despite waterproof claims. But behind that reflection was a wall I'd painted myself, a light fixture I'd installed, a home I'd created through years of sacrifice and months of physical labor. This is still mine, I whispered to my reflection. No matter who didn't come to see it. With that small affirmation, I fell into bed and into dreamless sleep, the worst day of my homeownership journey finally behind me. The morning after my failed housewarming party, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd washed myself. For a blissful moment before full consciousness returned, I felt only pride in my surroundings. Then memory flooded back, the empty rooms, the uneaten food, the absent family. I allowed myself exactly 5 minutes to wallow before getting out of bed. A lifetime of self-reliance had taught me that moving forward was the only useful response to disappointment. I showered, dressed, and began the process of dismantling yesterday's party preparations. The refrigerator overflowed with containers of food. I was arranging them in some semblance of order when my doorbell rang at precisely noon. Rebecca stood on my porch holding a bottle of champagne and wearing an expression of elaborate cheer that barely masked her discomfort. "I brought reinforcements," she said, gesturing to 3 people waiting behind her. "This is Zach from the design department, Lydia from accounting, and my neighbor James, who's a realtor and house enthusiast. Everyone's dying to see what you've done with the place." The introduction felt rehearsed, as though Rebecca had coached her companions on appropriate enthusiasm. Their smiles carried traces of the pity I dreaded, but also genuine curiosity. "Come in," I said, stepping back to allow entry. "There's certainly plenty of food." What began as an awkward gesture of sympathy transformed within the first hour. Zach, a fellow designer with an eye for detail, asked intelligent questions about my renovation choices. Lydia expressed genuine delight over the original woodwork. James provided expert validation of my investment, pointing out features that added significant value. "This built-in cabinetry alone would cost thousands to replicate today," he noted, examining the living room bookshelves. "They don't make houses with this kind of craftsmanship anymore." Rebecca moved through the space with easy familiarity, having heard about each project during our lunch breaks. "You have to see the window seat upstairs," she told the others. "It's straight out of a storybook." Their authentic appreciation began to heal something wounded in me. These were not people obligated by blood to celebrate my accomplishment, they had chosen to come, to see, to acknowledge my work. As champagne was poured and food distributed to plates, conversations flowed naturally. Rebecca mentioned her own difficult relationship with her parents, who still criticized her career choices despite her success. "They wanted me to be a doctor," she explained. "They introduced me as our daughter who could have been a physician to this day." Zach shared stories about his brothers, who had never accepted his sexuality. "Christmas is basically a competition to see who can pretend hardest that I'm not gay," he said with practiced lightness that didn't quite mask the hurt. Lydia's parents had divorced when she was young, creating similar diplomatic challenges to those I'd navigated. "I spent every holiday feeling like I needed a passport to travel between their houses," she said. Each one had a customs declaration about what I couldn't mention about the other household. James, the oldest of the group, offered perspective from 20 additional years of family negotiations. "The secret is creating your own traditions," he said. "My blood relatives are still important to me, but my chosen family is who I celebrate with first. They get priority in my calendar." Chosen family, I repeated, the concept simultaneously obvious and revolutionary. "The people who show up," James clarified. "The ones who celebrate your victories and help carry your losses without keeping score." By late afternoon, when my unexpected guests finally prepared to leave, the house had absorbed new memories. Laughter had echoed through rooms previously christened only with disappointment. Plans had been made for future gatherings, a movie night in the living room, a garden party when my perennials bloomed, a holiday dinner with no diplomatic navigation required. "We should do this monthly," Rebecca suggested as they departed. "Rotating houses. Though yours sets a high bar." After they left, I moved through rooms that felt fundamentally changed. The house was physically identical but emotionally transformed, no longer a showcase for absent family approval but a home where new connections had taken root. In the following weeks, I made two significant decisions. First, I began seeing a therapist to process my family relationships and the complex emotions surrounding my empty housewarming. Dr. Levine helped me recognize patterns of seeking validation from people unable or unwilling to provide it. "Your home represents independence," she observed during one session. "Perhaps your family's absence speaks to discomfort with your self-sufficiency rather than rejection of you personally." The perspective didn't erase hurt feelings but provided context that made them easier to manage. My second decision involved establishing boundaries with family members. When my mother called 3 weeks after the party, I responded honestly to her casual inquiry about how it had gone. "It was disappointing that no family members came," I said without accusation but without cushioning the truth. "I had hoped to share this milestone with you." Her excuses were predictable: the migraines, the distance, the inconvenient timing. I neither accepted nor rejected them, simply acknowledged her perspective while maintaining my own. "I understand you couldn't make it," I said. "I hope we can arrange another visit soon, but I need to know with certainty if you plan to come." Last-minute cancellations are difficult to manage emotionally. Similar conversations with my father and step-siblings established new parameters for our relationships. I would remain open to connection but would no longer chase approval or accommodate unreliable commitments. The monthly gatherings with Rebecca's group evolved into a genuine tradition. Each host would showcase their living space, however humble or grand. Zach's studio apartment revealed his extraordinary eye for maximizing small spaces. Lydia's rented townhouse displayed her collection of local artwork. James's historic Victorian demonstrated his restoration skills. When my turn in the rotation came again, I prepared with confidence rather than anxiety. These people would arrive as promised. They would appreciate the new kitchen backsplash I'd installed and understand the significance of the vegetable garden now thriving where weeds had once dominated. 6 months after my empty housewarming, I hosted Thanksgiving dinner in my dining room. The table that had waited vacant for family now accommodated my chosen family: Rebecca, Zach, Lydia, James, and several others who had joined our circle. We shared traditional foods alongside dishes representing personal heritage and significance. No one questioned anyone's life choices or resurrected ancient grievances. Politics remained undiscussed by mutual agreement. "This is what holidays should feel like," Lydia said as we lingered over dessert. "Comfortable. Safe." I realized I had created exactly what I'd dreamed of during childhood years, hiding in closets to escape arguments, a peaceful home where connections flourished without tension or diplomatic navigation. A year after purchasing my house, I posted anniversary photos on social media, before and after shots of major renovations, gardens in full bloom, gatherings of friends in various rooms. I hadn't expected family response, but my mother called the same day. "Your house looks beautiful," she said with uncharacteristic directness. "You've done an amazing job." "Thank you," I replied, the simple acknowledgement surprisingly meaningful even after a year of growth. "I've been thinking," she continued hesitantly. "Maybe I could visit next month? Just for a day, to see it in person." I considered the request carefully, weighing hope against experience. "I'd like that," I finally said. "But I need a firm commitment." "Choose a date that works, and I'll plan around it." "The second Saturday," she said immediately. I already checked my calendar. When she arrived 4 weeks later, our interaction held the awkwardness of long estrangement but also moments of genuine connection. She admired features I'd preserved from the home's original construction. She asked thoughtful questions about renovation choices. We didn't discuss the empty housewarming directly, but her presence represented a small step toward healing. As I reflect now on the journey from my empty housewarming to today, I recognize that painful day as a necessary turning point. Had family appeared as expected, I might have continued seeking validation from inconsistent sources, measuring my worth through others' approval. Instead, disappointment forced me to find authentic connections based on mutual respect and reliable presence. My house has become a true home not because family finally recognized its value, but because I filled it with relationships that nurture rather than deplete. The empty rooms that once echoed with absence now regularly resound with genuine laughter. The dining table hosts monthly gatherings where everyone feels equally welcome. The garden supplies vegetables for shared meals and flowers for celebrations. Houses are made of wood and stone, concrete and glass. But homes are built from acceptance and belonging, from showing up when expected and celebrating others' achievements without jealousy or judgment. My empty housewarming taught me to distinguish between those who claim importance in my life and those who demonstrate it through consistent presence. If you're watching this and recognizing similar patterns in your own relationships, remember that family connections matter deeply but shouldn't come at the cost of your self-worth. Build your home, literal or figurative, with intention. Fill it with people who celebrate your victories and help shoulder your disappointments. Create boundaries that protect your emotional well-being while remaining open to genuine growth and reconciliation. I'd love to hear your stories of creating chosen family or navigating complicated relationships with biological ones. Drop a comment below sharing your experience. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about building meaningful connections and creating spaces, both physical and emotional, where we can truly thrive. And if you're currently feeling alone or disappointed by important people in your life, remember that empty rooms eventually fill with the right people at the right time. Thank you for being part of my journey today.